and welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this video and the other content here, please consider liking and subscribing. And if you want to be a part of our community, we have a Discord server which will be linked below in the description. But without further ado, sit back, take a deep breath, and relax. And I hope you enjoy the video. Hello and welcome to the second set of writing that I have here. If you watch the first one, you'll know that these two pieces I'm about to read are Sage, Weed and Witches, and the second piece is Bad Omens. Starting with Sage, Weed and Witches. I can't really remember how I got the inspiration for this. It just kind of happened. It just, no, I think I'd just finished watching, The Chilling Tales of Sabrina. And, then, I started writing this, like the idea of witches, but in like a modern day setting. So I ended up with Sage, Weed and Witches. So in this one, Vivian, who's like the main character witch, there's three of them, but the main one's Vivian. She's basically scaring the ever-living daylights out of this boy who did not watch the Tea of Consent video, or at least didn't listen to it. So this is Vivian teaching said man a lesson and scaring him to all high hell. So without further ado, I suppose we should get to it. So this is Sage, Weed and Witches. Slithering in the shadows, the creature's slitted purple eyes glimmered slightly in the faint candlelight, half-serpentine body sliding between moss-covered pillars of filthy, cracked marble. "Please, let me go," Andrew Charleston begged, struggling against the rusted red chains that bound him to the central pillar. He had been here for days, at least he thinks so. There was no windows, only darkness and cold stone. He missed the sun. He yearned for its warmth. It was so cold here. It felt as if he shivered more with every passing hour. The creature did not respond at first, instead continuing to circle around for a few long, dreadful moments. Eventually it slinked out of the shadows and into the flickering light, extending to full height. Atop the serpentine body was the human form of a young woman, skin like dark oak, dressed in layers of flowing sheer clothes and pieces of animal furs. "Have you learned your lesson, little boy?" the creature hissed in a spiteful tone, drawing closer to Andrew, clamping his eyes shut. He turned his head away from the beast, shaking with terror. "Yes, God, yes, please just let me go," he continued to beg in response, still refusing to look upon the creature, tears streaming through hard-shut eyes. The creature ran a singular clawed hand along the side of Andrew's face, tracing along the structure of his skull. "And what is the lesson we have learned, sweet Andrew?" it said, slowly pressing harder with its unnatural claws into his fragile, human skin. "Keep our hands to ourselves. God, fuck, I'm sorry. I swear, I thought she wanted it," he screamed. Every muscle in his body wrought tight with terror as he continued to weep pathetically. Drawing back its clawed hand, the creature let out a wry smile at the weeping of the young man. "Excellent. You'll never speak of what has happened here, or I will hunt you down again, boy. Do you understand? It said, moving its face in front of his. Yes, I understand, he pleaded, finally looking upon the half-human beast. A smile cracked at the corner of its lips as it reached a hand towards Andrew, some kind of arcane energy weaving itself towards his temples. His shuffling and panic only delayed the inevitable. As soon as these glowing amethyst tendrils reached him, he slumped into an unconscious stupor. The creature lowered its hand whilst raising the other, casting another mysterious spell. Moments passed as the same amethyst light began to glow from runic patterns appearing in the floor. A small circle was being created around the temporarily comatose boy, and once complete, he vanished in an instant. Straightening its posture, the creature took a deep sigh as it tilted its head upwards, damp, dark, curly hair falling off the humanoid shoulders and onto a serpentine back. It moved towards the only exit of the unusual and mysterious room, the humanoid woman atop, cracking her knuckles and clicking her neck. The door opened in anticipation of her approach. As she passed through the doorway, the sound of serpentine slithering became the clacking of heels. Animal furs and sheer black clothes became a large, fluffy black jumper and shorts. Damp, dark hair became gorgeous, long, flowing curls that bounced with each lively step. "Vivian!" a voice called from the room to her left, the door wide open. "Estrella, is breakfast ready?" Vivian replied, walking through the door into the kitchen area and taking a seat at the center island, pouring a large cup of black coffee from the pot at its center. "How does blueberry pancake sound?" "It better sound good, because it's what you're getting, babes," Estrella answered, turning around from the stove with a plate of said blueberry pancakes, the warm, soft scent reaching Vivian's nostrils and evoking a deep, relaxed sigh from the young witch. As Vivian began to dig into her plate of fluffy pancakes, the sound of slow, begrudging footsteps could be heard from the other doorway into the kitchen. Estrella's eyes narrowed as her grip on the next plate of pancakes tightened. She took a step towards the door, standing next to Vivian. She kept her eyes trained on the coming sound. In the hazed glass of the door, a lumbering, hunched figure could be vaguely made out. As it finally opened the door, the sight of a small female figure, topped by a head of large, messy, and matted hair, stood before them. A long, crinkled white shirt covered most of the woman's body. Her head hung low as a single, croaking groan escaped dry lips. Estrella stared at the thing, eyes still narrowed before finally speaking. "Hey there, hun. Let me guess. Alarm didn't wake you?" she said, placing down the plate in front of an empty chair. The woman shuffled sordidly up to the table and sat down. Vivian glanced up at her. "Morning, Luna," she said, before eating another spoonful. Luna let out an obnoxiously loud yawn before lazily waving a hand in the air, transforming her from the ring wannabe to beautifully put together in an instant. Matted black hair had become a messy bun pinned with a small pink butterfly. White shirt had become a pastel pink shirt under a cropped black leather jacket. Skinny jeans clung to her legs, ending in large, brown, fluffy leather boots. "Morning, Viv," she droned back in response, before pouring far too much maple syrup on her pancakes and shoveling a large spoonful into her mouth. Spinning back round with a plate of her own, Estrella sat down with the others and finally began to eat herself. There were a few precious seconds filled with the sound of smacking lips and cutlery against plate, a sound which Estrella took as a job well done. "So, sent that Charleston boy back, or is he still sobbing in the basement?" Estrella asked Vivian, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose before beginning tying her hair back into a neat ponytail. Pretty sure he's learned his lesson, so I sent him back, Vivian replied, finishing off the last bite of her pancakes and beginning to sip on her coffee. You think we'll see him today? Luna grumbled between increasingly large mouthfuls. Oh, please, he's probably crying into a pillow as we speak, but I'd say he'll be back in a day or two, Estrella said, whilst pouring a small cup of coffee for herself and adding a generous dashing of milk. After all, it was just a bad dream, she continued before taking a sip. The three let out a little chuckle whilst exchanging cheeky looks. I don't care about him. He's dealt with. I just wonder how Sarah's doing, Vivian stated, resting her chin on a closed fist. You think we should see how she's doing today? Maybe invite her to dinner or something? Oh, I could do a lasagna, Estrella asked rapidly, shifting her gaze between the other two in rapid excitement. Sounds good to me, Luna replied, stretching her arms and legs before letting out a small, far more human-sounding groan. Well then, let's get going, Vivian said, standing up and beginning to walk to her room, Luna slowly getting up and following. Hey, I haven't finished my pancakes. Guys? Seriously? Estrella said, completely unacknowledged by her fellow witches, letting out a deep sigh before rapidly scooping the remaining breakfast into her mouth. And I see my breakfast goes completely unappreciated as per usual, she shouted through muffled pancake-filled cheeks before rushing down the corridor towards the other two. So that is Sageweed and Witches, a slightly longer form piece that I did. But what do you think? I am honestly kind of interested in expanding on this even further. I'd have a tendency to write series anyway. So, I mean, if that wasn't evident from the Dark Prince series, the Assassin series, Pirate series, I really like doing series. So yeah, I love the idea of this kind of trio of witches who are modern day women, but also witches, and that kind of mix of magic in the modern world and trying to use it in a certain way. I think the way I was going to do it, if I had continued, was what was it? I think it was that there was going to be like a witch hunter that came, but kind of slowly realised that these women are kind of doing only good, and so kind of ends up having a bit of a change of heart, and there's some kind of common enemy or something like that. I can't really remember anymore, it's been quite some time. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed that one. This next one's going to take a bit of explaining, so brace yourself. So, Bad Omens, I'm trying to like compress my ideas here. Bad Omens is based on the tarot card deck. So there are like the different like tarot cards and the major arcana and the minor arcana are all real, and they're in their own like separate realm, almost like gods basically. And they were just chilling in their own realm and doing their own thing until something has happened, and in this story again, if I had the time, I'd turn this into a whole thing, but I've got uni, so this guy that we follow, Hito, is got the power of the sun arcana, and it's the sun in reverse, which represents can represent a lot of things, but with him personally, the important part is that it can represent like depression a lack of joy, and he's quite a, I don't know, like a very jestful kind of guy. He makes a lot of quips and remarks, but he's actually depressed. And as the story would go on, if it does, once he kind of came out of this kind of depressive slump, he became happy. He would gain the power of the sun upright, and it was only once he kind of fully understood that life has ups and downs, and sometimes he's not going to feel good, and sometimes he will, and that neither of them last forever, but that's okay. And he kind of just accepts that he's not always going to be happy, but he's also, at the same time, he's not always going to be sad or lonely or exhausted and anxious, and etc., etc. And only when he finally fully understands the arcana in its whole, both upright and reverse, that's when he unlocks the full power of the sun arcana. But in this case, we begin this piece with someone like kind of entering reality, and this person was, again, if the story was continued, would have been found out to have been sent by the arcana, literally made, like by the world arcana, which isn't quite sentient like the other ones are. It's a bit more of it's alive, but it's a bit more kind of it's just not quite human and self-aware and and like conscious like the other ones are. But the other ones have been tricked and trapped by the minor arcana, who are now breaking into the real world and causing havoc. So the major arcana are channeling their power through people, not only to protect the world, but also in order to free themselves, because as, for example, Hito learning about the Sun Arcana and coming to understand it as its whole in all its aspects, once he does that, the Sun Arcana is freed from its captivity. But yeah, so this person has been sent into the world and is kind of literally birthed into reality, just out of complete nothing. And the first part of this piece expresses that. And this guy would eventually go on to become the aspect of the Moon Arcana, which involves a lot of mystery and intrigue, and his whole kind of thing is trying to figure out where he came from and why he exists. And there would have been lots of other characters if I continued on. I believe the Empress would have been a very artistic lady who was suffering from a bit of like artistic block and all that. And yeah, each of the major arcanas would have had their own kind of champions, if you will. But anyway, I think that's a pretty comprehensive summary of what's kind of going on. So without further ado, I will begin reading. Sorry to take up so much of your time. I hope you don't mind. I know quite a few people like my rambling, so hopefully you like me just kind of chattering away to myself. But thank you for being patient with me. His spirit awoke. A neophyte of consciousness suddenly jolted into reality. The stink of acrid smoke, a stench his fledgling consciousness had no recollection of. It burnt, it was burning his nostrils. Air from newfound lungs exhaled into the world, then a stuttered inhale invited the reek further in. It was disgusting. It still burned. A blistering dichotomy of a nearby blaze and snapping breeze pricked and prodded the nerves of his skin. Stimuli flooded every inch of his body. It was overwhelming. It stung. An excruciating second of adjustment. then balance. The heat and chill still battered flesh. Wind swept at clothing that clung to his body. His awakening awareness barely grasping the concepts of clothes and body. Something lightly fluttered along his forehead. It was hair. It was his hair. It felt strange. He was acutely aware of each follicle being acted upon by the sweeping wind. Sirens screamed in the distance, their wailing pounding his eardrums. It hurt. Even in the distance, the sound of the blaze was far more soothing, a gentle crackle. Small crashes broke into the soundscape being formed, occasional cracks and thuds splintering and disintegrating. The sound of fine gravel and rock being displaced steadily approached. The noise seemed so familiar, like it was something he should recognize, and yet his sparking cognition could not yet manage to do so. Blackened air mixed with crumbled concrete assaulted his tongue with its foul taste, his freshly formed body instinctively tightening his jaw and retracting his tongue. Disgust, that was new. Everything was new. Just as his newfound sentience took stable footing under the unrelenting stimuli of reality, his sight finally came to him. The beginnings of a blurry scene took form ahead, a swirling patterns, bright colours slowly shaping, slotting into a canvas of carnage. His eyes fought to bring the scene to focus, rapidly adjusting retina, cornea pummeled with light. Something was approaching. Accompanied by the displacing gravel, he could see something in the background. There were buildings. They were clean, no dust, no smoke, unsullied cleanliness. The ones around him were broken, crumbling, rotten, concrete carcasses. Finally, his blossoming psyche firmly grasped the shackles of creation and anchored itself to reality. There was a stranger approaching him. He was surrounded by destruction. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know how he got here. He didn't even know who he was. As the stranger drew closer and the world fell further into focus, his features became clearer. A thin, short, and scraggly amount of facial hair spattered pale skin. Sharp cheekbones led to tired, exasperated amber eyes. But before his freshly born retina could register anything else, the stranger opened his mouth and spoke. "You're late." What? The singular thought being instinctively translated by his body. "You're late. It's already happened." Hito gestured lazily at the destruction surrounding them. The boy before him was shorter than the ones he was used to. He also looked leagues less dire than the others. It was strange seeing an expression that wasn't unbridled angst on these people. For a moment, Hito almost considered that this wasn't the thing he was expecting. But there was no mistaking the feeling. A creeping chill on the back of your neck, the way they'd hold themselves almost unnaturally, like something pretending to be human. There was no doubt in his mind. This was an omen. "I didn't know you were capable of being late. Stuck in traffic?" He gestured dryly, brushing concrete from his long black overcoat. Where am I?" The omen's voice was shaky. Hito stopped and turned his head around, his hands busy buttoning up the top of his shirt. "You're joking, right?" "I didn't know you people were capable of joking." Now, having fully spun round, Hito walked back towards the other boy, who was staring around with widened, silver eyes. "And you're quite a bit shorter than the normal omens. Are you new? Is there even such a thing as new for you people?" Hito said, looking down with inquisitive gaze. "Omen? Is that what I am?" "Holy shit. No, that's not possible," Hito said, his brows scrunching with disbelief. Did this thing really not know what it was? "Please, do you know who I am?" The boy was pleading now. Pity flickered in his heart, but was quickly snuffed out. "Omens aren't human. It'll disappear soon anyway." Shoulders pulled back as his posture straightened. He looked down at the omen, his head remaining upright. You're an omen. A warning's to tell me about coming breaches, and like I said, you're late. You things have one job and you failed. I'm sorry. There it was again. A flicker of pity. It annoyed him. It annoyed him how human this omen looked, how innocent its eyes were. It's fine. I don't know if you have a boss or anything, but you tell him I dealt with it just fine. Hito's shoulders dropped back down, his eyes allowing that flicker of pity to burn brighter. I'll be going now. I had to stop eating for this crap and I'm really hungry, he said, turning his back on the omen once more. Barely a moment after, he felt the gentle tugging of the omen's meager hands on his arm. Please, I don't know who I am. His eyes were welling with tears. Hito looked back and sighed deeply, pausing amongst the carnage. Look, if my previous experiences with you things are any indication, you won't have to worry about asking that question for much longer. You tend to just disappear after I deal with the arcanas. A single shining tear rolled its way down the boy's cheek. I don't want to disappear. Before he could muster a response, he felt the wind rising. Motes of dust and small shards of rock began tumbling along shattered ground. Hito immediately began to dart his head around the area, scanning the surroundings. A second one, he said to himself. Run, get out of here, now addressing the omen boy. Why? What's wrong? Before he could finish his question, the answer came hounding at the doors of reality. The wind continued to grow fiercer, rapidly ramping into a howling gale. An insipid cold pressed itself against their skin and dragged its chilling touch down their spine. The few seconds of rapturous noise drove itself through their skulls before abruptly ending. A single second of unnatural silence struck the area. The nearing sirens, the distant city, the morning birdsong, even the sound of their breathing, all silenced. The cold was lifted from them, replaced with a neutral emptiness of non-existence. No heat, no cold, just a disturbing absence of sensation slithering across them. Seeming to pull in on itself, the sight before them distorted and quivered under some unknown force, their eyes struggling to comprehend the juddering of a momentarily still scene. Once the second of nullifying silence ended, their gaze was greeted by an increasingly incomprehensible sight. The fabric of reality was being torn open. The otherworldly force overcoming the barriers of existence, defying science and spitting in the face of sanity. The unending cosmos awaited on the other side. The glimmering of eternity reached out into real space, but something else reached out also. As reality screamed in futile defiance and the laws of physics asserted its rigid rules upon the gaping wound in existence, something birthed itself into their world, the breach snapping shut behind it. It had the form of an elongated human body, a hunched back supported broad shoulders, a disturbing contrast to the long, slim legs that accompanied it. Despite the unnatural proportions and unsettling figure, it stood at the height of a nearby abandoned bus. Stretching out four spindly arms, it flexed its foul mockery of the human form, a simple double-edged sword in each hand. What is that? The omen was frozen in a concoction of fear and disgust. Get behind me. Hito's voice was steady, but his actions were swift. He grasped the omen's wrist and pulled him. The profane being slowly swept its head around, observing the world. Ah, the mortal plane. I look forward to plucking the secrets from your blackened hearts. The creature's voice was a gentle, slinking whisper, and yet each word resonated as if it were murmured into their very ears. Hito stepped forward, his eyes devoid of fear but twinging with exhaustion. The Seven of Swords, I presume. His gaze wandered to the 3 additional blades lodged into the Arcana's back. It tilted its head, eyes of burning orange glaring at him through a mask, one which bore the face of a gently smiling man. Your heart weighs heavy with the weight of deceit. You deceive with your every move. I see it in your eyes. Pretending you're something you're not. Allow me to relieve you. Just shut the fuck up and let's get this over with, Hito responded, stepping forward and rolling his shoulders. In his hand now shimmered a translucent golden card, a similar auric glow shining under his dirty shirt. The card depicted a sun shining over the land, but the card had been reversed. Even as he twirled it between his fingers, the image shifted to ensure the sun never stood upright. Hito held it betwixt 2 fingers up to his face, his expression adorning a burst of fiery determination. Burn under the black sun. His voice roared with power, an ethereal voice joining his own. The card burst into a flash of light, engulfing Hito before dying down to reveal black flames wreathing his body, his clothes replaced by onyx armor. Streaks of gold slithered along each inch in small slivers. A half-helmet covered his upper face as a halo of burning black light shone with oppressive intensity. The sun. The Seven of Swords hissed. Like I was saying, if we could finish this quickly, I was in the middle of a seriously good bowl of beef noodles. And, well, that's Bad Omens. I completely forgot to mention the concept of omens when I explained the summary of this. The boy who appeared into reality is supposedly an omen. So how I first, the birthing idea of this story began with a guy who is visited by omens who say, a so-and-so tragedy is about to happen, like a building is going to collapse or whatever. And one omen comes along after the tragedy's happened. The guy's like, you're late. And the omen's like, what? The omen doesn't even know what they are. And another thing happens straight after, like it did in this story. And then the guy presumes, evidently you must have been the omen for this one. So you weren't late, you were on time. But unlike every other time, this omen doesn't disappear, and they persist, and that's because they are an omen for a very, a terrible world-ending thing. And they're just kind of appearing on time just before the horrible event is happening, as all the other ones have. It's just this is on a much grander scale, so they've appeared what seems to be ages before the thing actually happened. And that got merged with me having a thing for the tarot cards, because I was playing Persona 5 Royal at the time, and all the Arcana cards from there. And the two kind of merged, and it kind of birthed this story here. But I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed all of them. I say all of them, both of them. And please do tell me what you think down in the comments. And again, I hope you have had a nice time just sitting back and relaxing and listening to me talk and ramble. And I hope you have all had a really good year, basically, since I've been gone for uni. And I miss you all. I do. And I hope to get back to doing videos once this is all over. But obviously, uni's always got to take priority. But anyway, have a wonderful day or night, whatever time of day it is for you, and I wish you all the best. Bye-bye. Hey there, thank you for watching this video, but just before it ends, I'd like to take this chance to thank all my disciples of Jesus Christ patrons. If you'd also like to support me, you can check the links below. But until the next time, take care of yourself, have a good day or night, and I'll see you in the next video.